Thank you, Cantor. Thank you, Ben and Dan, for helping out. Thank you, Michael, for coordinating an awful lot of this. It's Shavuot. Hoo-ha. And Shabbat at the same time. That's not bad. That's not bad. Shavuot, uh, it marks the whole connection that we have with God, that God loves us enough to give us Torah and all those insights, like the seventh day is a day of rest. That was a gift. The idea that knowledge is a good thing. I mean, it's like giving everyone a pair of wings to be able to read and to learn. And those are things that were really unique to Jews. Jews brought those two concepts into the world. We tell a story. It's a story from the Bible. It's a story of a family, Elimelech and his wife Naomi, and they had a couple of boys, Machlon and Chilion. And they were doing pretty good until there was this famine that hit in the land. And it's sort of not all that different from right now, where there's an incredible disruption in the land. Food was really hard to come by. And so this family decided to go to a different country. They went to the next country over, called Moab. And they were going to be there for a little bit, but they stayed for a while. So it wasn't bad enough that there was a famine in the land. Now they're living somewhere else away from their people, away from their country. And then, they sort of get well, first off, the husband dies, Elimelech, but they decide to stay there. And then the two sons each take wives, Orpah and Ruth. And they live there about 10 years. And as if that's not bad enough, both of the sons die. So we got the mom and her two daughters-in-law. She didn't pick them. They were her deceased children's wives. So we've got three widows. We've got an older widow and two younger widows. That's a pretty bleak situation. Bleak on top of bleak on top of bleak. In some ways, it kind of reminds you of when we went out of Egypt. It's not just we were a group of slaves, but we did get out, hallelujah, it was really good. We didn't have all that much. We didn't know what we were going to do. And then on top of it, Pharaoh's army starts chasing us, and then we're stuck by the Red Sea, or the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds. And we're stuck there, and it looks like there's no way out. Well, that's what it looked like for Naomi and Ruth and Orpah. It looked like they were really stuck. Things got worse and worse and worse. But, with a little bit of faith, or a lot of faith, God answered our prayers at the Red Sea, and God was there with Naomi and Ruth and Orpah. And God shows that when there's a death, it doesn't mean it's the end. You can rebuild again after a death. It looks like it's really bad. It looks like you're stuck, with the chariots chasing after you. And how are you going to do? You love someone. It looks like your life has come to an end too, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. Today we're going to remember some people that died. And we're also going to remember, like one of the important lessons of Ruth and the crossing of the Red Sea, that life doesn't have to come to an end, even though it looks like there's a dead end. That there's a way back to life. Everyone who can come on has an opportunity to share any names that they want to, and they're just going to be sharing names. But I have two empty seats right next to me. I don't know if you can see this seat over here and this seat over here. I have two seats that are empty. Someone, and it's really only limited to people that are on Zoom because that's the only way we can hear you. If you have an opportunity, you can go to get on Zoom now. two people are going to have an opportunity to tell a story of someone whom they're fond of who died. And it will help us all to come closer to remembering all of our loved ones. In a moment, I'm going to tell you a little bit that death doesn't need to be an end. I'm living with three people who are really stellar examples of that lesson. My wife, Mindy, her husband died, beloved husband, died unexpectedly. Young man, right at the end of Passover, right when Passover ended. And it looked like her life had sort of come to an end, and it was paralyzing for her. She says that she didn't sing. She didn't have any song in her. It was really hard. And she sort of went on autopilot, just sort of going through stuff. But she found a way to get back to life. It takes time, but she found a way to get back to life. And I think we're all, and especially me, are very appreciative of that. My mom lost her husband, my dad, a few years back. And one of my dad's friends, a man named Leonard, lost his wife about the same time. And both of them had really loving, practically lifelong relationships with them for decades and decades. And that's the way that they saw themselves and they saw their life. But they were able to see that it's not a dead end. And they were able to find each other. Actually, the two of them, it's kind of funny, they took their show on the road and they gave a talk in Florida about finding love again. And it was very, very well received and well attended. People came out from all over to hear that important lesson. And it's a lesson that's it's not obvious, but it's something that our tradition teaches us, especially like in the book of Ruth, that life doesn't have to end when a dear one dies. Life doesn't have to end, that there can be new joys and new loves and lots more life afterwards. I mean, it takes a while. It definitely takes a while, but it can be that way. So I'm going to start right now with inviting people to sit in each of these chairs. If you're on Zoom, and Zoom are really the only people that can do this. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to share a word about someone who was dear to you, it's not the whole eulogy. You're not going to give a whole eulogy. You're going to tell one story about someone who was dear to you. Raise your hand and let me know, and then we'll make sure that you're unmuted and you can share a story. Daniel, you've got one of the chairs. But Daniel, before you start speaking, I want to find out who's going to go in the other chair. Daniel, you've got this chair over here. Does someone else want to share a story about someone who died, who they were fond of? I see Daniel. Going once? Twice? Anybody else want to share a story? I have a chair right over here. All right, so we'll have only one story. Daniel, let's hear.
My grandpa passed away when I was like very little, and a lot of the time he was an engineer, so he used to like play like Legos with me all the time, and I kind of just like enjoyed being around him, and then he just passed away.
It's interesting. He shared some of his love. Do you still like to play with Legos?
Well, yeah.
And say I'm really good at math. And keep in mind.
Is your mom there? Does she want to share some words as well?
My, I think what Danny was talking about was that Danny's really good at math, and so was he, and they shared a bond about that. And I think Danny thinks of him sometimes, because they have a lot in common, and he's not here anymore. But Eli, my other son, his middle name is Roy, which is named for my grandfather, he's speaking about his great grandfather, actually. He's my grandfather. And so he always wanted me to have another son, and he passed away, and then I got pregnant shortly thereafter. So we named him Elijah Roy in honor of him. So.
And what's your grandpa's full name?
My grandfather's full name was Roy Hagan.
May Roy Hagan always be remembered and remembered for blessing. May it bring a warm feeling to people whenever his name is said.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
So we remember Roy Hagan, and we remember a few other people. And in a moment, I'm going to read a list of names. And if you want to add any other names, you can. As a synagogue, we remember these people who died during the last year. And I'll also add our yard site list. We remember Fred Prass, Ruth Sloat, Stanley Baskin, Martin Perlmutter, the father of Sherry Scott, Alan Dworsky, the husband of Barbara Dworsky, Paul Schroeder, the husband of Brenda Williams, John Middick, the father of David Middick. Remember Ed Melikowski, the husband of Judy Melikowski. And Judy also wants to remember Morris and Esther Weinstein, Sam and Lena Schnoll, Irving Kosofsky. We remember Robert Shook, the brother of Herb Shook, and Virginia Cox, a friend of Jeff Levin. And we add them to the names of those who this week mark the anniversary of their yard site. Bertha Alpern, Ray Shore, the grandmother of Phyllis Green, Janet Tischler, the mother of Deli London, Barbara Zimmerman, mother of Bruce Zimmerman, Edith Weintraub, the grandmother of Elizabeth Neiterman, Benjamin Cantor, Ruth Klauser, the mother of Doug Klauser, Mary Nissenblatt, that's Mindy's grandmother, Hirsch Leib Purcell, grandmother of Barbara Brizzell, and Lillian Rothberg, the mother of Michael Rothberg. We now go around, and anyone who wants to remember any other names, because this is Yizkor, you can go and say those names, unmute yourself. You know what I'll do? I'll sort of call out the name, and you unmute yourself, and then, so Len, we're gonna start with you. Len, why don't you have to unmute or push down the space bar. If you hold down the space bar on your computer. The big long bar on the bottom is the space bar. Hold it down. Len, we'll come back to you in a moment when you can unmute yourself. Nancy, do you want to share any names?
My parents, Sam and Selma Gordon, my grandparents, Rabbi Moshe and Zizha Gorodetsky, and my other grandparents, Morris and Esther Gerlis. my in-laws, Max and Miriam Wild, and B and Phil Persky, and my numerous uncles, aunts, and beloved cousins. Thank you.
Michael, do you want to share any names? Len, are you ready to share some names of family members? Oh, Len, we can't hear you. So, if you could type them in, I'll say them if you want, or we'll come back around. Sharon Sero, do you want to share any names of family members?
Okay, my parents, my parents, Ed and Selma Rothstein, my many aunts and uncles, my grandparents on both sides, my husband's parents. We've just lost so many of that generation. And my cousins, we've lost some. Remember them all.
Cantor Harris, do you want to share any?